And we are still here in Ways and Means, all present and accounted for. It is 2:50 something. And we are going to pick up H 802. John Gray is going to join us. I'm going to give a quick preface in more casual language than John might use. Two things. One, I'm imagining that this would go in the yield bill. There's no need for it to be in a separate bill. And two, so if folks can go back in time to when we created the special education block grant, which we referred to as 173. Right? Everyone remember that? Okay. There was a funny thing where we put in like inflation adjustment for like a couple years, and then something happened in the statute, and I don't think anyone did it purposely. I don't really understand what happened, but you can't just like inflate and then stop inflating. So we're gonna put the inflator back in statute. That's the big. Yep. Thanks, John.
Does that mean each of these children will receive more money for their tuition?
It's the special education block grant, so it is sort of early intervention, as well as non-early, timely intervention. I don't know what the non-early and regular special education.
This goes to the schools?
Yeah, it's a block grant.
Afternoon, everyone. John Gray, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm happy to screen share. Do you want to see the bill as introduced or just we can now codify the dollar figure now that we know it. Do you just want to see that?
I think it's easier to just start where we are and then we can go backwards if we need to.
Okay.
But
Sounds good.
so the bill is introduced, and then you know how JFO like doesn't do all the work until it gets to us because we're so lucky. So we have I asked John to draft an amendment that matches up with all the mathy math.
That's
Really getting formal and more formal as the day goes on.
It's a Tuesday.
I know, it's a Tuesday. So warm though, John.
that's perfect because that's basically the lead in I wanted to get for this, which is to me, this is a happy bill. That is a nice confluence of a bunch of people working well together. That's nice when that happens. And I will leave it at that. Here we go. Happy bill. H 802.
Good enough.
I was gonna say.
I know. Okay.
Oh, gross.
So this is an act relating to adjusting the census grant for inflation. I have this in the format of amendment. It doesn't have to be in this form, but this is essentially the bill was introduced to solve the simple problem identified, which is that the inflation factors included in statute for the census grant stopped at FY27. And now we need to add in an inflation factor going forward. So that's what the bill does. At the time that I drafted it, I did not have the dollar figure that could be used in its place, and now I do. So there's you're going to see a lot of text here, which is going to make it seem more complicated than it is, but I will walk through some of it. In section 1, you're just seeing stylistic changes from our editing team to match modern conventions, so I'm not going to touch on that. Uniform base amount at the bottom of page 1 is really the whole thing that we're talking about here. The uniform base amount is the amount that's multiplied by your district's long-term membership to produce that census grant. So you can think of it as the per pupil figure that's extended for these purposes. And as discussed, we didn't have an inflator for the uniform base amount moving forward. And you can see all this language here that describe the way to arrive at the uniform base amount in existing law, determined by dividing the state appropriation on page 2 and increasing it by NIPA for certain years, and then increasing by average inflation factors for the following years. We can make it a lot more simple now. So what you see is the uniform base amount means on page 2, starting on line 13, 2,350 as adjusted for inflation. So 2,350 is the figure for FY27. And then going forward, you will now have an inflation factor. It is a little bit different of an inflation factor than we've talked about typically in other contexts where we just use a straight cumulative inflation factor from a particular year to the year of determination. This is using a 3-year rolling average to try to reduce some volatility, but uniform base amount 2,350, it shall be adjusted for inflation each fiscal year beginning in FY28 by taking the base amount for the preceding fiscal year. So in FY 28, that would be that 2,350 you see in statute, and adjusting it by the most recent 3-year average annual percentage change in NIPA and rounding upward to the nearest whole dollar amount. I'm happy to pause if folks have questions about what that means. It's technical, but I'm guessing pretty uninteresting. This adds a 3-year rolling average inflation to the uniform base amount, which solves the problem that animated the bill.
And what came over to us did not have the 2,350, right?
That's correct. I didn't have that figure at the time, and this is speaking about the working together well. This is one where, speaking to AOE, JFO showed some of the historical context for the determinations that were made back at the time of Act 173 to produce this figure, and then seeing how statute could reach this. The simplest way to do it is just to outright codify the dollar figure. So that's the happy thing we have now. Yes, I didn't have this figure at the time the bill was introduced, so you had a lot wordier of an amendment as introduced. I'll keep going unless folks have.
So this will increase each year based upon the NIPA factor.
Assuming that NIPA does increase, which we can probably safely assume, but if your inflator did not, if in fact it went down, affect your amount as well. But I think the expectation is typically that you're inflating.
Yes, there is a.
Knows what's gonna happen.
Exactly.
Oh, that cuts.
No.
Okay.
The one thing I might add on that front is, I think if you look back, just recalling things like once earlier today in tables of the NIPA index factor over time, if you had a 1-year blip, that would be offset in some ways by having this 3-year average annual percentage change, right? Because it would be offset by the 2 surrounding years essentially. So if you had a blip, it's addressed somewhat in using a 3-year average, which is meant to smooth somewhat the annual variation, right?
So, and if we didn't do this, then the local taxpayers would pick up the growth in cost.
If you didn't do this, technically you would just have a fixed census block grant amount. You have a uniform base amount that is not moving over time. And so you would potentially not have sufficient money.
So functionally, yes.
I can't think of anything bad that will happen to our locals. I mean, we're gonna have to figure out a way to come up with the money, but to our local communities, I think this is the right thing for them. I can't think of any harm at all.
And I think it was the original legislative intent, but I really have no idea.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
While obviously it does have a substantive effect, because in the absence of it, you would have a fixed dollar amount. I would describe this in ways as a technical fix, right? It's addressing what seems to be just an oversight in statute that you didn't have an inflation for years forward.
Yeah, thanks.
It just is to show the remainder. We have the full section here, and all the language that you're going to see in the following pages is striking the transitionary provisions that were codified in the green books. Sometimes you would have those in session law. In this case, it was in the green books. For cleanliness moving forward, it will be much easier to just read this statute. You don't have call outs to specific fiscal years in the statute, right? So just striking for fiscal year 2023, the amount of census grant will be calculated in this particular way. You don't need that now that you've passed FY 23. On page 4, you can see the call out that got us here. For fiscal years 27 and onward, the amount of the census grant shall be the uniform base amount, that figure we talked about above, multiplied by the supervisory union's long-term membership. So we don't need to call out the time period. That is just the way that it is now. And then we can strike the transitionary language for fiscal years 24 through 26. The act would take effect on July 1, 2026. It reflects the FY 27 uniform base amount, and then it would be inflated beginning in FY 28 using that FY 27 figure and the 3-year rolling average.
Deliberating whether I should even ask this question.
About the inflators?
And the reason I ask is IDA is such a broad umbrella, and some of the disability categories, and there's 13 disability categories, some of them are health related, And healthcare costs are growing at a much different rate than HIPAA, and I didn't know if there was any consideration of that.
I think we are at a point where we're defaulting for NEPA for all education stuff. And when we're ready to change the inflator, we can do it sort of across statute.
Well, and you might do, I guess I was saying something different.
Oh, okay.
You might do a different inflator for
For this.
disability categories. I mean, other health impaired, for example, or orthopedic issues are gonna accelerate much more quickly than specific learning disabilities, perhaps. I don't know, not an expert. I'm
No,
just
no.
saying, it makes this is not a linear relationship.
And when we're ready to look at all of the different inflators and like have more opportunity to be discerning, maybe we can like revisit each one and
Yeah, I
change them.
understand in answer to
Yeah.
Representative Brannigan, I'm
Yeah.
just saying. happy-
No, I
Maybe it's in more nuance.
I anticipated this conversation, yes, and I agree with you.
Okay.
Yes, Representative Maslin.
Rep. Holcomb raises a very good point, but I think it's a good place to start. It's a good pylon that we're flying around. Put it in several languages.
This is my dream. I think I told you guys about my dream with inflation factors. Maybe I didn't.
No.
I thought you guys commented that my dreams were very sad. Maybe I'm recalling a different committee. But to me, I would love to, because I find it so unwieldy to have all these separate sections in which we say as adjusted for inflation and then we spell out the concept. I would love if we almost had like a subchapter or something that was just different inflation factors.
I'm joining your dream. You've never told me.
And you
about this.
cross-reference to them whenever you're inflating a particular thing and you just say as adjusted for inflation. And then you just go look at the inflation subchapter and it says we adjust this way for this, we adjust for this way.
I like
I don't
that.
know. To me, that would be so much simpler to read, but
Our future.
I think maybe we can do that at some point, not today, but I.
I just don't find my dream sad. Someone
Joining
did.
your dream, joining your dream. Thank you, John.
So it's $2,350 per student based on enrollment. A pretty blunt instrument, I think we will kind of recognize, but how does that compare to where it was when it was first initiated at $2,350?
Yeah, sorry, let me just pull it right back.
Your question?
That seems like a better Julia question.
I'm happy to not answer.
Okay, cool.
Great. I can also write an email, so happy to.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Sean? You're welcome to submit.
Oh, okay, I don't
Love that for you.
Hi, Kelly Richter, JFO.
Folks, I want to fold this into the yield bill because it feels like a technical correction and that I think is, yeah. We don't need to give the Senate more vehicles than they already were getting. Julia, back to you.
So unfortunately, I have to follow up on that Julia question, unless John knows it
Oh my gosh,
offhand.
so sorry.
Okay, so I will follow up with that. I will say that in fiscal year 26, the average, so the way that, essentially the way that the census block grant has worked is it's been phasing districts into this uniform base amount. And so the average census grant amount in 26 was 2,300. And then in FY 27, AOE has estimated for it to be 2,350. And then it would be moving forward with inflation going forward. So because AOE already included this base amount of 2,350 for the purpose of the census block grant calculation in FY 27, by passing this bill, there would be no fiscal impact to the education fund in FY 27 because that's what's already been done by the agency and communicated to school districts. It would be in future years, it would be that there would be this adjustment for inflation. The other piece that I will add that the agency reminded us of in calls, and Ezra has done a lot of work on this, is the concept of maintenance and fiscal support, right? So that those federal guidelines, and so the importance of making sure that maintenance and fiscal support is met. And this would be one way to move in that direction.
Any further questions for Julia? Great. Thanks, Julia.
Yeah.
You're done for the day. Don't get used to it. Please. And we have quite a few bills coming up on the docket, so if folks could read ahead. And let me know if you have any flags about anything. So we're gonna revisit 757 tomorrow with some amendments. To take a look at some of the tax law changes they made and bring it sort of closer in alignment with some of the requests from the tax department and to good tax policy. We're gonna hear testimony on the Medicaid school-based services bill, H 558 that we got from House Healthcare. We have H 549, an act relating to eligibility of detainees to obtain a state-issued non-driver identification card. There's like a little bit of fee business in there. H 841 is an act relating to miscellaneous animal welfare procedures. It includes a checkbox on your tax form for animal welfare or something. I have already had an amendment drafted to remove that checkbox. Because that stuff doesn't really work out very well generally.
I like the, excuse me for interrupting.
Yeah.
Like conservation fund.
Yes,
You know, checkbox, sort of like that, or is it?
sure. Is there a green up checkbox?
Yeah.
Yes, it's like that. Yes, and the more checkboxes there are, the less the checkboxes will work.
That's correct. This was an checkbox.
And then we have H 775, which we talked about on Friday, but it's the rest of our witnesses. That's an act relating to creating tools for housing production. We're also gonna have an amendment on that. We're gonna go back to school construction legislative language and ideas with a bunch of witnesses. That's gonna be a collaborative conversation. We have H 917, an act relating to military affairs. I don't know anything about that. What are you learning about that one? Thank you. I think it's from general. We're gonna go back to our conversation about the federal link up and tax conformity, with some new updated numbers with Pat and Kirby. And then we're gonna straw poll empty our miscellaneous tax bill. So if there's anything else in there that we haven't talked about, let's talk about it. And then sort of hopefully tying regional assessment districts and non-homestead residential tax classifications up with a bow. But both of those pieces of language, I am anticipating we're gonna hold until we get a bill from the education committee, and that would all be exempt from crossover deadlines. So we won't be formally voting on that for a little bit.
Sorry, the RADs or RADs and miscellaneous tax.
RADs and homes and
And class.
tax classification,
Okay, yeah.
yes. Miscellaneous tax is gonna leave us on Friday. That's it for the week, but I'm sure many more things are gonna get put in there. Like H 921 alcoholic beverages. Okay, thanks. See you tomorrow.
Sorry, do we have the update on the first bill? Do we have the new language? For
For,
757?
no, we do not.
Miscellaneous tax bill update.
There's a section by section from Friday. Teddy's working on it, Rebecca, and he might have it if you want to send to you. I don't know if he has it. We don't usually post in advance, but maybe Sorcha can send it around. Yes, Sorcha doesn't have it yet.
Advance.
Yeah.
It's easier to read if we have the.
Agreed. Any other questions? Yes.
Out of the realm of what you were just talking about, tomorrow I have a bill on the floor, I think it's 588. And, can I